United Nations building in New York.
Bangunan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu di New York yang menjadi ibu pejabat rangkaian antarabangsa yang bertujuan mengekalkan keamanan dan menjadikan kehidupan lebih baik lagi bagi umat di dunia. Hampir keseluruhan negara dunia berhimpun di sini sebagai negara merdeka yang berdaulat. Apabila Piagam Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu dirangka dalam tahun 1945 di San Francisco, ianya dianggotai oleh hanya 50 buah negara. 1/4 umat manusia masih di bawah penjajahan. Di ketika itu, bila mana Perang Dunia Pertama masih jelas dalam ingatan dan Perang Dunia Kedua masih belum berakhir, para perwakilan itu merangka, kami rakyat bangsa-bangsa bersatu berazam untuk menyelamatkan generasi yang akan datang dari menjadi mangsa peperangan dan menekankan keyakinan dalam hak asasi manusia, bersamaan antara lelaki dan wanita, bersamaan antara negara dunia, sama ada besar ataupun kecil, dan untuk mewujudkan suasana di mana keadilan dan penghormatan akan dapat dikekalkan ke atas perjanjian-perjanjian serta sumber-sumber lain undang-undang antarabangsa dan menggalakkan kemajuan sosial dan meninggikan taraf kehidupan sejagat. Dengan azam yang sedemikian, mereka telah merangka Piagam Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Ianya membentangkan tujuan pertubuhan tersebut, dasar-dasar tindakannya, hak serta tanggungjawab negara anggota serta jentera yang menggerakkannya. Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu mempunyai 6 cawangan utama dan banyak cawangan-cawangan kecil yang lainnya.
Each of the principal organs has a different structure and membership suited to its function.
Perhimpunan Agung berdasarkan kepada prinsip kedaulatan dan persamaan negara anggota. Di sini setiap negara, besar atau kecil, kaya atau miskin, mempunyai hanya satu undi. Ianya bukanlah sebuah parlimen dunia dan negara anggota tidak terikat kepada keputusannya. Bagaimanapun keputusan tersebut adalah bersandarkan kepada suara dunia.
Un vote enregistré a été demandé sur ce premier projet de résolution. J'invite les membres de l'Assemblée à faire connaître leur vote sur ce projet en appuyant sur le bouton approprié.
وأدعو أعضاء الجمعية إلى التصريح بتصويتهم على هذا المشروع بالضغط على الزر الملائم.
Are the votes of all delegations correctly recorded? If so, the Secretariat will tabulate the vote.
各代表团投票的记录是否正确？如果没有错，秘书处就要统计票数，公布结果了。
Ketetapan anti penjajahan misalnya menjadi sokongan moral kepada rakyat yang mencapai kemerdekaan dan menjadi anggota Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu sejak tahun 1945. Dengan keanggotaannya yang berkembang, pertubuhan itu memainkan peranan penting dalam membantu negara-negara baru untuk menyesuaikan diri dengan suasana baru mereka. Kebanyakan dari negara-negara tersebut adalah negara miskin dan jurang antara mereka dengan negara-negara kaya semakin meluas. Dewan Perhimpunan tersebut telah menyeru diwujudkan satu sistem baru ekonomi yang membahagikan sama rata sumber-sumber dunia. Dunia membelanjakan kira-kira 2,000 bilion ringgit Brunei setahun untuk pertahanan. Perhimpunan Agung telah cuba bertahun-tahun untuk mendesak negara dunia supaya menyetujui pelucutan senjata. 2/3 dari anggota Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu telah pun menandatangani perjanjian menghentikan perkembangan senjata nuklear termasuk di laut dan di darat. Tetapi pelucutan senjata masih menjadi tugas rumit Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu.
Cualquier continente capaces de ofrecer a la organización
mengekalkan keamanan dan keselamatan serta membentuk hubungan baik antara negara adalah dua tujuan Piagam Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Mengawal keselamatan pula adalah tugas utama Majlis Keselamatan. Ianya mempunyai 15 anggota. 5 darinya ialah China, Perancis, Soviet Union, Britain dan Amerika, yang mempunyai kelima negara kuasa besar dalam tahun 45 yang mempunyai kursi tetap dan kuasa pembatal. Jika salah satu darinya mengundi menentang, satu-satu ketetapan itu bermakna akan kalah. 10 buah negara lainnya dilantik oleh Perhimpunan Agung bagi tempoh selama 2 tahun.
If even one of them votes no, the resolution is defeated. The other 10 members are elected by the General Assembly for 2-year terms.
The resolution reads as follows. The Security Council, having considered the letter of the permanent representative of Kenya,
Keputusan Majlis Keselamatan ke atas masalah yang melibatkan keamanan antarabangsa mestilah dipatuhi. Ianya juga mungkin mengenakan sekatan untuk menghentikan ancaman ke atas keamanan atau tindakan-tindakan mengacau. Bagaimanapun, ianya jarang menggunakan kuasanya sepenuhnya dan lebih menyukai jalan perundingan.
or indirectly, for any reason whatever, in the internal or external affairs of any other state,
Sebarang pertikaian yang mengancam keselamatan dan keamanan antarabangsa boleh dihadapkan ke Majlis Keselamatan. Ianya boleh meminta kedua pihak supaya mencari satu penyelesaian secara aman melalui perundingan. Jika keganasan meletus, majlis tersebut biasanya menyuruh diwujudkan satu gencatan senjata dan ianya mungkin menghantar para pemerhati, tentera atau pasukan pendamai jika disetujui oleh kedua pihak. Askar-askar di bawah kerahan bangsa-bangsa bersatu ini akan mengawasi gencatan senjata, mencegah keganasan baru dan memulihkan keadaan. Mereka dilengkapi dengan senjata tetapi hanya untuk mempertahankan diri dan mereka mestilah menjalankan arahan tanpa memilih pihak. Askar-askar tersebut telah pun dikerahkan ke Kongo, Irian Barat, Kashmir, Cyprus dan Timur Tengah. Di samping mengawal keselamatan, langkah-langkah juga perlu untuk mencari keamanan. Majlis Keselamatan mungkin melantik perunding-perunding atau menyeru diadakan rundingan untuk menyelesaikan pertikaian. Inilah tugas bangsa-bangsa bersatu yang paling rumit, di mana ianya sekarang dituduh menemui kegagalan.
This is the hardest part of the UN's job, the part it is most often accused of failing.
Di ketika seperti ini, bangsa-bangsa bersatu menjadi perhatian dunia. Tetapi ianya juga memberikan saluran bagi diusahakan diplomasi halus, di mana rundingan-rundingan private boleh membantu melonggarkan ketegangan. Bangsa-bangsa bersatu juga mempunyai sebuah mahkamah antarabangsa. Ianya beribu pejabat di Hague, di negeri Belanda, dan mempunyai 15 orang hakim dari 15 buah negara yang dilantik oleh Dewan Perhimpunan Agung serta Majlis Keselamatan bagi tempoh selama 9 tahun.
Namely, my predecessor as President of the Court, Judge Manfred Lux.
Negara-negara mungkin bersetuju menerima keputusan mahkamah tersebut dan menghadapkan pertikaian mereka ke pengadilan mahkamah itu. Ianya telah pun menyelesaikan pertikaian sempadan dan perselisihan mengenai kandungan perjanjian. Badan-badan pertubuhan sedunia itu juga boleh meminta nasihat dari undang-undang darinya. Mahkamah tersebut misalnya atas permintaan Majlis Keselamatan telah melahirkan pendapat bahawa adalah salah bagi Afrika Selatan untuk terus menjajah Namibia. Afrika Selatan telah enggan menyerahkan Namibia di bawah jagaan bangsa-bangsa bersatu. Sistem Majlis Amanah Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu itu diwujudkan oleh Piagam Badan Sedunia itu untuk mengawasi pelaksanaan usaha ke arah kemerdekaan. Kebanyakan dari negara-negara terlibat adalah bekas jajahan negara yang dikalahkan semasa kedua-dua perang dunia.
The basis upon which decentralization of the central government should take place.
Majlis Amanah tersebut merupakan satu-satunya badan dunia bangsa-bangsa bersatu yang kini hampir kehilangan peranan. Daripada 11 wilayah yang dijaganya, hanya satu yang masih di bawah penjajahan. Salah satu lagi badan utama bangsa-bangsa bersatu yang menghadapi banyak masalah sedunia ialah Majlis Ekonomi dan Sosial. Ianya mempunyai 54 buah negara anggota yang dilantik oleh Perhimpunan Agung bagi tempoh 3 tahun. Mereka berusaha melalui agensi-agensi badan sedunia itu untuk mencapai matlamat ketiga Piagam Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu, iaitu kerjasama antarabangsa dalam menyelesaikan masalah ekonomi dan sosial dan menggalakkan hak asasi manusia.
economic and social problems and in promoting human rights.
Ketika ini, sebahagian besar usaha bangsa-bangsa bersatu ditumpukan ke atas usaha membasmi kemiskinan, kebuluran, penyakit dan buta huruf. Ianya memerlukan kemahiran di berbagai bidang dan rangkaian agensi-agensi tersebut keseluruhannya dikenali sebagai keluarga bangsa-bangsa bersatu. Sebahagian darinya mempunyai peruntukan dan piagamnya sendiri seperti Pertubuhan Permakanan dan Pertanian FAO, Pertubuhan Kesihatan Sedunia WHO serta Bank Dunia.
And the World Bank.
Yang lainnya mempunyai hubungan langsung dengan Dewan Perimpunan dan dibayar melalui peruntukan bangsa-bangsa bersatu atau sumbangan-sumbangan sukarela Rancangan Kemajuan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu UNDP atau Tabung Kanak-Kanak UNICEF. Sebuah hampangan baru mungkin melibatkan separuh dari agensi-agensi tersebut. Kajian untuk menentukan kawasan, pinjaman untuk pembinaan, pakar-pakar untuk melatih pekerja, penyusunan rancangan bagi perusahaan baru menggunakan kemudahan tersebut, skim perairan, serta rundingan-rundingan mengenai ekspor penghasilan dan kesan ke atas alam sekitar. Agensi-agensi tersebut juga memberikan bantuan kecemasan berupa makanan dan perubatan. Ianya juga bermakna rancangan jangka panjang termasuk kajian pertanian, sistem perairan, pelajaran di bidang permakanan, pemeliharaan kanak-kanak, perumahan dan penduduk serta hak asasi manusia. Majlis Ekonomi dan Sosial menyelaraskan ke semua usaha tersebut. Ianya menentukan kepentingan serta membuat laporan ke Perhimpunan Agung Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Satu lagi badan utama pertubuhan itu ialah sekretariatnya. Petugas-petugas antarabangsa itu mengandungi pengkaji, pakar perangkaan, terjemahan, teknik, penasihat ekonomi dan pentadbir. Ketua sekretariat ini ialah Setiausaha Agung yang dilantik oleh Perhimpunan Agung atas syor dari Majlis Keselamatan. Selaku Ketua Pentadbir, beliau bertanggungjawab bagi menjalankan pertubuhan tersebut dengan lancar dan selaku Ketua Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu, beliau juga membawa sebarang masalah penting ke pengetahuan Majlis Keselamatan dan Perhimpunan Agung. Beliau juga mungkin diperlukan untuk menggunakan kuasa baiknya bagi menyelesaikan sebarang masalah antara negara. Dunia ketika ini hidup dengan berbagai masalah yang tidak dapat diselesaikan secara bersendirian. 40 tahun selepas Piagam Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu diwujudkan, ianya kini lebih-lebih diperlukan lagi. Tujuannya adalah jelas, cuma cara pencapaiannya adalah masih belum mencukupi. Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu bersandarkan kepada penghormatan dari segenap umat terhadap keputusan-keputusannya. Penghormatan sedemikian pula memerlukan sokongan dari seluruh penduduk setiap negara anggota. Justru itu, masa depannya bergantung kepada setiap rakyat negara yang menjadi anggotanya.
The future of mankind may well depend on whether the sovereign nations of the world want to make the United Nations work.
Pada 23 hari bulan September lalu, Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu menerima sebuah lagi negara anggota, Negara Brunei Darussalam. Berangkat ke ibu pejabat pertubuhan tersebut di New York, di hari bersejarah itu ialah ke bawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Baginda Sultan dan Yang di-Pertuan Negara Brunei Darussalam. Berangkat sama ialah Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pengiran Perdana Wazir Saibul Himmah wal Waqar Pengiran Muda Muhammad Bolkiah, Menteri Luar Negara Brunei Darussalam, dan Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pengiran Bendahara Seri Maharaja Permaiswara Pengiran Muda Haji Sofri Bolkiah. Buat pertama kalinya dalam sejarah Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu, Setiausaha Agung Pertubuhan tersebut sendiri telah menyambut keberangkatan tiba baginda selaku ketua negara anggota terbaru. Sejurus selepas tiba, Kebawah Maha Mulia juga telah menemui Presiden baru Perhimpunan Agung Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu kali ke-39, Tuan Paul Lusaka dari Zambia.
I now invite the General Assembly to consider under Agenda Item 19, entitled Admission of New Members to the United Nations, the positive recommendation by the Security Council for the admission of Brunei Darussalam to membership in the United Nations. In this connection, a draft resolution has been submitted in document A/39/L1/revision 1. May I take it that the General Assembly adopts the draft resolution by acclamation? It is so decided. I therefore declare Brunei Darussalam admitted to membership in the United Nations. May I request the Chief of Protocol to escort the delegation of Brunei Darussalam to its seat in the General Assembly Hall.
Kemasukan negara Brunei Darussalam selaku negara anggota yang ke-159 diterima tanpa sebarang pengundian setelah diusulkan bersama oleh 150 buah negara. Permohonan negara Brunei Darussalam terdahulu dari itu telah diluluskan oleh Majlis Keselamatan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu pada 23 hari bulan Februari yang lalu. Tuan Lusaka kemudian mengundang para perwakilan untuk memberikan ucapan aluan kepada negara Brunei Darussalam.
It is indeed an honor and privilege for me, at the start of this 39th session of the General Assembly, to welcome Brunei Darussalam as the 159th member of the United Nations. The assumption by Brunei Darussalam of its full international responsibilities as a sovereign and independent state on 1 January 1984 and its membership in this organization mark yet another step towards the achievement of one of the fundamental goals of the United Nations, the universality of membership. I am happy to see Brunei Darussalam assume its rightful place in the international community. I am confident that it will support the work of the United Nations and its efforts to promote the ideals of peace, justice, cooperation, and understanding in Southeast Asian region and throughout the world. On behalf of the General Assembly and on my own behalf, I should like to convey my congratulations to the new member state of Brunei Darussalam. I wish also to welcome most warmly the head of state and Prime Minister of Brunei Darussalam, His Majesty Sultan Hassanal Bolkiah Muzaddin Wadaula, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed Bolkiah, and the other distinguished members of his delegation. Their presence here today marks an historic moment, both for the United Nations and for the government and people of Brunei Darussalam.
Wakil bekas negara penaung Brunei Darussalam, Sir John Thompson dari Britain berkata, beliau gembira kemasukan negara Brunei Darussalam diterima sebulat suara. Katanya ini menunjukkan keyakinan negara antarabangsa terhadap masa depan Brunei Darussalam. Beliau juga menyentuh latar belakang perhubungan antara kedua negara.
Mr. President, on 7th of September last year, the General Assembly unanimously adopted a decision extending to the government and people of Brunei its warm congratulations on their forthcoming independence and their best wishes for peace, happiness and prosperity in the years ahead. I could not improve on these sentiments, but I do wish to echo them on this auspicious occasion and to extend a very warm welcome to His Majesty the Sultan and the delegation of Brunei Darussalam who join us for the first time today. Mr. President, it is always a pleasure to welcome newly independent states into the United Nations. That pleasure is naturally all the greater for my delegation when the state concerned is one with which Britain has enjoyed close ties of friendship stretching back over many years. Such is the case with Brunei, which today becomes the 159th member of the United Nations. In fact, until Brunei's independence on 31 December last year, Brunei had been in treaty relationship with my country since 1847, when a treaty was signed for the furtherance of commercial activities. By a further treaty in 1888, Brunei was, at the request of the then Sultan, placed under British protection while continuing to be governed and administered by the Sultan and his successors as an independent state. Britain assumed responsibility for Brunei's defense and foreign relations, while Brunei maintained control over internal affairs. By a supplementary agreement of 1906, the Sultan undertook to accept a British resident as agent and representative of the British government. The British resident was empowered to advise the Sultan on matters of internal administration. In 1959, the agreement of 1906 was replaced by a new treaty. Britain remained responsible for Brunei's external affairs and defense, and a High Commissioner was appointed to Brunei in its own right. An amending agreement of 1971 provided that Brunei should enjoy full internal self-government, and the direct responsibility of the British government was reduced to the conduct of the state's external affairs. Mr. President, this process of gradual transfer of responsibilities to the territory, a process that has been central to our decolonization policy since the Second World War, was reflected in a treaty of friendship and cooperation signed in 1979, in which it was agreed that after a transitional period, Britain would relinquish its final responsibilities towards Brunei on 31 December 1983. Brunei would then, in the words of the treaty, and I quote, resume full international responsibility as a sovereign and independent state, unquote. Mr. President, we have been proud of our association with Brunei, as we have been proud with our close and continuing association with the member states of ASEAN, of which Brunei became the sixth member earlier this year. And we feel privileged and honored to be able to address the General Assembly this morning, surely a milestone in Brunei's history. We are also naturally delighted that Brunei has seen fit to join the Commonwealth as its 49th member. I have no doubt that our enduring relations with Brunei will go from strength to strength in the coming years, and that they will be the closer for the mutual affection and understanding that has grown up between our two countries over the last 150 years. I am confident, too, that Brunei's representatives will make a significant contribution in the field of international relations, and that we shall all gain from the new insights they bring to our discussions. Mr. President, I echo what you said in your opening remarks about the universality of the membership of the United Nations. I think the way in which the United Nations has grown from 51 to 159 countries is a testimony to the achievements of the international community, and I would venture to say, not least of my own country, in the last 40 years. Sometimes we are told that the world is going from bad to worse. I think the expansion of the General Assembly, symbolized by the admission today of Brunei, shows that in some directions, not least in the direction of universality, we are making progress. It remains only for me to say how delighted I am that the General Assembly has seen fit to admit Brunei into membership of the United Nations by acclamation. This is a testimony to the confidence I am sure we all feel in Brunei's future. I hope, too, that Brunei will be able to count on the support both of this institution and its member states, support that is always vital and never more so than in the early days of new nationhood. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for his statement and for the kind words addressed to me. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Tengku Ahmad Ritaudin, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Malaysia.
Menteri Luar Malaysia Tengku Ahmad Ritaudin selaku Wakil ASEAN berkata, penyertaan negara Brunei Darussalam dalam Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu merupakan satu lagi perkembangan penting dalam sejarah ASEAN. Beliau berkata semua negara sekutu ASEAN berhasrat untuk meneruskan hubungan rapat yang lebih baik dengan negara Brunei Darussalam yang menjadi anggota ke-6 ASEAN awal tahun ini.
It is with great pleasure and pride that I speak this morning on behalf of the 5 member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, namely Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Malaysia, to express our warmest welcome and felicitations to Brunei Darussalam, a close neighbor of ours and the 6th fellow member of ASEAN, on the occasion of its admission to membership in the United Nations. We also feel particularly pleased and privileged to have with us this morning His Majesty Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah Muizzuddin Wadaulah, who is personally leading the delegation of Brunei Darussalam. We know that His Majesty has made a special effort, in spite of his many other responsibilities, to be here for this historic occasion, which is itself a tribute to Brunei Darussalam's commitment to the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter. Speaking for a moment as a representative of Malaysia, I feel particularly honored that it has fallen to me to speak on behalf of ASEAN on this happy occasion. Malaysia's ties with Brunei Darussalam go back many centuries. Indeed, we spring from the same historical and cultural roots. We share similar traditions and customs. We are heirs to the same heritage. Brunei Darussalam's full independence is therefore like welcoming home a beloved brother. The full independence and admission of Brunei Darussalam to the United Nations also represent an event of historic significance to ASEAN, whose membership was increased for the first time since its formation, when Brunei Darussalam became the 6th member of ASEAN in January 1984. Even before its full independence, Brunei Darussalam had been an observer to the annual ministerial meetings of ASEAN. Since then, As a full member, Brunei Darussalam has participated actively and constructively in the work of ASEAN. And we are confident that her membership in ASEAN will be a source of added strength to our organization. All the member countries of ASEAN look forward to continuing our close and cordial relations with Brunei Darussalam. We wish to reaffirm to His Majesty and to the government of Brunei Darussalam our full support for their endeavors to enhance the welfare and well-being of their people and to promote peace, security, cooperation, and understanding among nations. Mr. President, let me in conclusion express once again, on behalf of the ASEAN member countries, our congratulations to the delegation of Brunei Darussalam and our warmest good wishes for the continued prosperity and well-being of Brunei Darussalam and all her people. We are convinced that the participation of another new member will enrich the United Nations and contribute immeasurably to the protection and promotion of the principles on which the organization was founded. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished Foreign Minister of Malaysia for his statement and for the kind words addressed to me. I now give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran, who will speak on behalf of the Asian states.
Said Rajai Khoransani dari Iran berucap selaku wakil negara kumpulan Asia. Katanya beliau yakin negara Brunei Darussalam akan dapat memberikan sumbangan yang bernilai dan positif terhadap usaha bangsa-bangsa bersatu. Beliau juga berharap supaya kemerdekaan negara Brunei Darussalam awal tahun ini akan menjadi contoh kepada negara-negara lain yang dijajah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. On behalf of the Asian Group, my delegation has the honor and the sincere pleasure of welcoming Brunei Darussalam as the 159th member state of the United Nations. The Asian Group is particularly pleased with the membership of Brunei Darussalam in the light of the fact that she is an Asian state and will be an addition to our distinguished group. I note with special satisfaction the fact that the long overdue liberation of Brunei Darussalam from colonial domination on January 1st, 1984, and its admission to the United Nations mark yet another progressive step toward the complete elimination of colonialism from our world. Since their subjugation as a protectorate territory in 1888, the people of Brunei Darussalam have never lost sight of their God-given right to self-determination, nor of the fact that with the exception of submission to God, any other form of submission is plain evil and therefore unacceptable. The members of the Asian Group, therefore, congratulate the people of Brunei Darussalam on this occasion for their perseverance and exuberance and wish them success in their independence, social progress, and quest for self-sufficiency. We hope that soon we shall witness such moments for other regions still deprived of their inalienable right to self-determination. We also welcome the distinguished delegation of Brunei, wishing them success and fruitful participation in the work of the United Nations. We are confident that Brunei Darussalam will make a valuable and positive contribution to the work of the organization. While wholeheartedly congratulating and welcoming the delegation of Brunei Darussalam in my capacity as the chairman of the Asian Group, I would like to convey to its permanent representative that at the headquarters he will enjoy the total and warm support and cooperation of the members of the Asian Group. Mr. President, allow me to take the opportunity on behalf of my own delegation, the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, to sincerely welcome the Islamic State of Brunei Darussalam to the community of nations. The distinguished delegation of Brunei Darussalam can rest assured of the unreserved support and cooperation of the mission of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the United Nations. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Islamic Republic.
Juga berucap pada hari itu ialah Tuan Liguaila dari Botswana. Beliau mewakili negara-negara kumpulan Afrika. Tuan Liguaila berkata, hampir setiap tahun pertubuhan sedunia itu menerima anggota baru dan ini membuktikan bahawa dunia semakin bebas dari penjajahan. Tegas beliau, usaha selanjutnya pula ialah untuk membebaskan Namibia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, welcoming a new member into our ranks is by all accounts a happy occasion. We are indeed very happy to welcome Brunei Darussalam to the membership of our United Nations and express to her the best wishes of the African group. The fact that almost every year in the past few years we have welcomed a new free nation into our ranks demonstrates quite clearly that we are making steady progress towards the total elimination of the remaining pockets of colonial resistance in the world today. The extension of the frontiers of freedom has become inexorable. So has the march towards the universalization of the membership of this organization. But as we justifiably celebrate the arrival in our midst of the new free nation of Brunei Darussalam, let us not forget that the struggle must continue. Today it is Brunei Darussalam. Tomorrow it must be Namibia, whose independence and freedom we must welcome and celebrate in this august assembly. And by tomorrow, I mean the 40th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations and the 40th session of the General Assembly. On behalf of the African Group, Mr. President, it is a great honor and privilege for me to assure our new friend of the abiding friendship of the African states here at the United Nations. Brunei can always count on our unreserved support and cooperation as they seek to discharge the onerous responsibilities they take upon themselves today. Botswana, as a member of the Commonwealth, is also very happy to have an addition to that organization. But since I'm representing the African group here, I can only welcome to the United Nations as the chairman of the African group for the month. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of
Mewakili negara Eropah Timur ialah Tuan Heriot dari Republik Demokrat Jerman. Dia berkata penyertaan negara Brunei Darussalam merupakan satu lagi langkah bangsa-bangsa bersatu ke arah menjadikannya sebagai sebuah pertubuhan dunia dalam erti kata sebenarnya. Beliau juga melahirkan kegembiraan kerana negara Brunei Darussalam mulai tahun ini telah dapat menentukan nasibnya sendiri selaku sebuah negara yang merdeka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in my capacity as chairman of the group of the Eastern European Socialist countries, I would like to express deep satisfaction in welcoming Brunei Darussalam as the 159th member state of the United Nations and congratulating it on its admission. Having gained independence, the people of this country started a new stage in its history, since now it is able to determine by itself its future free from colonial oppression. The admission of Brunei Darussalam to the United Nations Organization is a further step on the road to full implementation of the principle of universality of this world organization. At the same time, it is a convincing sign of the efficiency and importance of the historic declaration on the granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples. When we will celebrate next year the 25th anniversary of Resolution 1514, we can look back with pride and satisfaction at a large number of countries that gained their independence. We do, however, not forget the important task still facing us in the further process of decolonization. It is our desire, and everything should be done to fulfill the aim that in the next future also Namibia may take its place in the United Nations as independent and sovereign state. In cooperation with non-aligned states and on the basis of the United Nations Charter and Resolution 1514, we will also in future promote that the peoples of Namibia and all other colonially dependent territories, especially in the Pacific region, gain their freedom and independence. We strongly object to all imperialist attempts of reaching their political, economic, and military strategic interests on the coast of the oppressed peoples by the forced maintenance of the colonial status or by neo-colonial maneuvers. Mr. President, delegations of European socialist countries are convinced that Brunei Darussalam will consistently fulfill the obligations of the United Nations Charter. We would like to use this opportunity to assure the new member state of our close cooperation. We wish the people of Brunei Darussalam success in strengthening its independence and shaping its national development. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative
Mewakili
of the
negara-negara
Democratic
Amerika
Republic
Latin
for his
dan
statement.
Karibian ialah Tuan Xavier
I now give the floor to
Ariastila
the
dari Peru.
representative of Peru
Beliau telah melahirkan
who will
harapan
speak on behalf
supaya
of the
hubungan
Latin
rapat
American
dan
states.
kerjasama yang baik dapat diwujudkan antara negara-negara Amerika Latin dan Karibian dengan negara Brunei Darussalam.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President,
al hacer uso de la palabra en mi calidad de presidente del
as I
Grupo
take the floor
Latinoamericano,
in my capacity as chairman of the Latin American Group for the month of
deseo
September,
expresarle el Grupo Latinoamericano y del Caribe
the Latin American and Caribbean Group
su más cálida bienvenida
extends its
a
warmest
Brunei
welcome
Darussalam.
to Brunei
Su
Darussalam
ingreso como el miembro
Its admission
número 159
as member
de las
number
Naciones Unidas
159
constituye
of the United
un
Nations
paso significativo
is a significant
en el
step
reconocimiento y afirmación de la universalidad
in our
de
recognition
nuestra
and
organización
affirmation of the
y del rol que le
universality of our
compete
organization
en la búsqueda
and of
de
its
la
role
concertación
in the quest
entre los pueblos.
for harmony among nations.
No dudamos que el ilustrado gobierno
We have no
de
doubt
Brunei Darussalam
that the illustrious government of
otorgará sus
Brunei
mejores
Darussalam
a la tarea común de promover
will
la
make
paz,
every effort
la seguridad
toward
y la
our
cooperación
shared endeavor
internacionales
of promoting international
hemos
peace,
comprometido
security, and
los
cooperation, to
de
which
la
we,
organización.
the members of the United Nations, are all committed.
Hace aproximadamente 500 años
Approximately
el
500
continente
years ago,
americano y la isla de Borneo
the American continent and the island of Borneo were united by the ships of the great navigator Fernando Magallanes Magellan. Today, with the admission of Brunei Darussalam to our organization, an opportunity is given us to establish new contacts among our peoples as part of the United Nations family. It is our wish that in light of those initial geographical links and of the historical relations that we have had with the Asian continent, we may be able to develop a close and fruitful cooperation with Brunei Darussalam. The group of Latin American and Caribbean countries, which it is my honor to represent, expresses its most cordial greeting to His Majesty, the head of state and Prime Minister of Brunei Darussalam, and expresses every wish for the success of his government and the prosperity of its people. Thank you very much.
Sir John Thompson dari Britain berucap buat kedua kalinya, tapi kali ini selaku wakil Eropah Barat dan negara-negara lain. Katanya jumlah negara yang mengusulkan bersama kemasukan negara Brunei Darussalam itu menunjukkan rasa muhibah negara-negara antarabangsa terhadap negara Brunei Darussalam. Beliau meyakinkan bahawa Eropah Barat dan negara-negara lainnya bersedia memberikan bantuan kepada negara Brunei Darussalam.
Mr. President, I promise that I will not always speak twice on the same item. However, I welcome it on this occasion as it gives me the opportunity not only of welcoming Brunei Darussalam twice, but also of congratulating you twice. An accident of the alphabet has determined that now I have the privilege and honor of speaking as this month's chairman of the Western European and Other States Group. And in that capacity, I give you the congratulations of the group as a whole. It also gives me particular pleasure to congratulate Brunei Darussalam on its admission by acclamation to membership of the United Nations. The large number of delegations that co-sponsored the resolution of admission bears witness to the goodwill felt by so many member states towards Brunei Darussalam and satisfaction at Brunei's decision to join the International Committee of Nations and to take on the responsibilities placed on all of us by the United Nations Charter. I know I speak for my colleagues in the group when I say how pleased we are to welcome the representatives of Brunei Darussalam in our midst today. I assure the delegation of Brunei that they may always rely upon the trust, cooperation, and assistance of the members of the Western European and Other States Group in the fulfillment of the objectives we at the United Nations have set ourselves. Thank you.
Negara-negara Arab diwakili oleh Tuan Abdallah Salah Al-Astal dari Negara Demokratik Yaman. Beliau berkata negara Brunei Darussalam akan dapat memberikan sumbangan kepada matlamat bangsa-bangsa bersatu ke arah perdamaian dan keselamatan antarabangsa. Brunei Darussalam, tegas beliau, juga mempunyai hubungan yang baik dengan negara-negara Arab dan beliau berharap untuk mendapatkan sokongan negara Brunei Darussalam dalam perjuangan negara Arab, terutama sekali bagi rakyat Palestin.
Mr. President, it gives me pleasure on behalf of the Arab group to participate in welcoming Brunei Darussalam and its admission to the international family in the framework of the United Nations. Undoubtedly, the young Brunei will effectively contribute, along with the international community, to the realization of the lofty goals of the United Nations in a manner which would promote international peace and security in an era witnessing political tension as well as an international economic crisis. On this occasion, I'd like to refer to the special relationship that Brunei Darussalam enjoys with many of the states members of the Arab group. In addition to the long historical links between the Arab states and Brunei, there is also the long, fertile common heritage which unites them despite the long geographical distance separating the two parties. For example, hundreds of thousands of Yemenis live and continue to live in many of the states of Southeast Asia, including Brunei Darussalam. In the light of this special relationship between many of the Arab states on the one hand and Brunei Darussalam on the other, we are looking forward to the participation of the young state and its support for the efforts of the Arab states in this international forum to solve their just causes, in particular the cause of Palestine and the Palestinian people struggling to restore their national rights, as well as that of the Arab states struggling to liberate its occupied territories. I thank you, sir.
I thank the representative of the
Puan
Democratic
Jean
Yemen
Kirkpatrick selaku
for
wakil
his
tuan
statement.
rumah Amerika Syarikat
The kind
berkata,
words
beliau
addressed
yakin
to me.
negara Brunei Darussalam yang telah menjadi anggota ASEAN dan Commonwealth akan menjadi anggota yang dapat membina pertubuhan bangsa-bangsa bersatu itu. Beliau berkata negara Brunei Darussalam dan Amerika Syarikat mempunyai banyak hubungan yang telah diwujudkan sejak lebih 100 tahun yang lalu.
Mr. President, it is a real pleasure to see you presiding here over this General Assembly's work. We have all observed your very considerable diplomatic skills in the years that I have been present at the United Nations, and like all other whom we know, the United States feels confident that the General Assembly will benefit greatly from your guidance during this coming session. Mr. President, the United States is extremely pleased to co-sponsor the application of Brunei Darussalam for membership in the United Nations. As host country, the United States welcomes Brunei to New York, and as founding member of the United Nations, we welcome Brunei Darussalam to the United Nations. We believe that Brunei will be a most constructive member of this body. Brunei and the United States have enjoyed a variety of ties, all of them friendly, extending back over the past 100 years and more. Our consular relations date from the late 19th century, and commercial contacts and mutually advantageous trade go even further back. Full diplomatic relations were established with the resumption of Brunei's independence on January 1 of this year, and a United States embassy has opened for business in Bandar Seri Begawan, just as the embassy of Brunei Darussalam has opened in Washington. The United States is confident that in the months and years to come, we will all benefit here by the presence of Brunei's delegation in our midst. In addition, in having become the 6th member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, Brunei has joined an organization which, as we all know, is an outstanding example of common purpose, regional cooperation, and constructive action. On the occasion of Brunei's admission to the United Nations, and on behalf of the United States delegation and the American people, I wish to extend most sincere congratulations to the people of Brunei and to His Majesty, the Sultan and Prime Minister, we look forward to working closely with the representatives of Brunei Darussalam in this General Assembly and throughout the United Nations system. We welcome the representatives of Brunei Darussalam to New York City, the United States, and the United Nations. Thank you very much.
I thank the
Presiden
representative of
Perhimpunan
the
Agung
United
kemudian
States
menjunjung
for
ke
her
bawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia
statement and for the kind
Paduka Seri
words
Baginda
addressed.
Sultan dan Yang di-Pertuan Negara Brunei Darussalam untuk bertitah.
I now take pleasure in inviting the head of state and Prime Minister of Brunei Darussalam, His Majesty Sultan Hassanal Bolkiah Muzaddin Wadaula, to address the General Assembly. I request the Chief of Protocol to escort His Majesty to the rostrum.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, on behalf of my delegation, permit me, Mr. President, to add our congratulations to those of other distinguished delegations on your election as President of this 39th session of the General Assembly. With your rich experience and wisdom, my delegation is confident that you will ably manage the proceedings and affairs of this Assembly successfully. I would like to thank you, Mr. President, and distinguished delegates for your kind words of welcome. I would also like to take this opportunity, Mr. President, to thank all members of the Security Council who scrutinized our application for membership of this organization and for the favorable endorsement. We are particularly grateful to the members of ASEAN and to the United Kingdom for jointly sponsoring our application. Last but not least, we wish to thank all those member states who co-sponsored the resolution before this Assembly, welcoming our admission into the United Nations. My country and my people, Mr. President, are grateful to you and to the nations of this Assembly for the honor that this moment marks. It marks not only our accession to membership in this fellowship of nations, but also the international endorsement of our sovereignty and integrity as a nation. By most of the traditional ways of measuring, Brunei Darussalam is a small nation. Our land area is modest. Our population barely exceeds 200,000. Our national resources, though they are plentiful and valuable, are not as great as those of some. Despite these limitations, my country can offer the world several things which in my judgment are valuable. First of all, experience, the perspective lent by a long and difficult history. We are a new nation, but an ancient country, one of Asia's oldest. Visitors to Brunei many centuries ago found an established social system with a rich and flourishing culture. 500 years ago, under the leadership of my ancestor, Sultan Bolkiah, the fifth Islamic Sultan, Brunei played an important role in the spread of the Islamic faith in Southeast Asia. So we have known pride and glory, but we have also experienced much pain. For 300 years, from the 16th through the 19th centuries, our land and our region were racked by rampant piracy, a series of wars, the violence of those who call themselves explorers, but whom we knew as exploiters. In this century, we have lived under the protection of an imperial power, albeit a benevolent one, Great Britain, and for a time during World War II under military occupation by Japan. In short, our country has known peace, but also war, wealth, but also poverty, energetic commerce, but also isolation, development, but also exploitation, self-government, but also foreign rule. All this has not been without benefit to us. It has taught us to appreciate the realities of this world. Hence, my delegation wishes to assure this Assembly that our approach to the United Nations is a realistic one. We do not see the aims and objects of the United Nations Charter as mere abstract concepts. As a small nation, and rich with experience, we really appreciate the moral and legal significance of these principles and will always strive to achieve congruence between these principles in our own conduct in world affairs. We wish to assure this Assembly that we accept fully the obligations enshrined in the United Nations Charter. Together with other member states, we will always strive to realize these aims and objectives. We genuinely believe in the preservation of world peace through collective security. We endorse the promotion of economic development through mutual help. We will uphold the principles that each country has the inalienable right to establish its own form of government without any form of outside interference, and always having regard to the prevailing circumstances in each country and aspirations of its own people for a better standard of livelihood and well-being. We have major stake in the efficacy of international law, in the principles of the United Nations Charter, and in the collective security systems which the United Nations represents. I therefore assure you, Mr. President, on behalf of my delegation, that you will not find us wanting should our adherence to these principles ever be put to the test in future. My delegation is conscious that there is a substantial body of opinion that maintain that the United Nations has fallen far short of expectation of its members, yet others suggest that it is becoming irrelevant. We believe that this is not because there is anything wrong with the ideals of the United Nations. We believe that the effectiveness of the United Nations depends on its members. It can only be as effective as its member states will allow it to be. For us small states, we need the United Nations more than others. But this is not to say that my delegation will be uncritical. When the need arises, we will be critical, but we will not be intemperate in language nor lacking in objectivity. We will support practical measures, and we will not make propositions which violate the very norms which we profess to uphold. We live in the world in which violence is a fact of life. In Southeast Asia, peace, security, and stability is being threatened by forces that are disregarding the basic principles of the United Nations Charter. I refer, of course, to the armed invasion and continued occupation of Kampuchea by Vietnamese forces, disregarding the principles of non-interference in the internal affairs of other states, and in violation of international law and normal standards of international behavior. In the Middle East, the continued denial of legitimate rights of the Palestinian people constitutes the core of the problems of that region. Brunei Darussalam remains steadfast in her conviction that a just, lasting, and comprehensive solution must take into account the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination in their own state of Palestine. We also support the Palestine Liberation Organization as a sole representative of the Palestinian people. Brunei Darussalam joins other nations in opposing the continual Israeli occupation of Arab lands, including southern Lebanon. We wish to express our deep concern at the continuing conflicts between Iran and Iraq, which conflict has caused thousands of lives and untold human sufferings and destructions on both sides. Brunei Darussalam joins other Muslim countries in earnestly calling upon the two nations to halt the war and settle their disputes peacefully in the interest of Islamic solidarity. With regard to the situation in Afghanistan, Brunei Darussalam shares the indignation and concern of the majority of the nations of the world and calls for the withdrawal of foreign forces from Afghanistan and for respect for the right of self-determination of Afghan people and the restoration of an independent, non-aligned Afghanistan. Mr. President, as we are all aware, the Charter of the United Nations, among its provisions, calls for the promotion of the economic and social advancements of all peoples. Yet in South Africa, the government continues to pursue its inhuman system of racial discrimination. Brunei Darussalam, like other freedom-loving nations, strongly deplores the repressive policies and practices of the South African government. We wish also to express our support for the people of Namibia in the struggle for liberation from South African colonialism and for complete independence for Namibia. Small countries like us want peace, but we see a world where others want to settle issues by force of arms. We have no other hope than to look up to the moral and persuasive authority of the United Nations and its machinery for the maintenance of peace and security. We will, of course, endeavor to build up our defenses to the extent that man and resources will permit us. But we believe that in the world of today, the collective strength of the United Nations is the ultimate hope for us small countries. We firmly believe that the security and well-being of our country can only be assured on the basis of strict adherence to the basic principles of the United Nations Charter. For small countries like us, world peace is a necessary precondition for our economic and political survival. My delegation would also like to place on record our appreciation for the cooperation, friendship, and support which our neighbors in the ASEAN region have extended to us. Even before we assume full responsibility for our external affairs, the 5 member countries of ASEAN extended us their hand of friendship and cooperation. They encourage us to get acquainted with matters of diplomacy and regional cooperation. As their efforts to strengthen regional peace, progress, and prospects are entirely consistent with our hopes, with our own hopes and aspirations, we are now a part of ASEAN. As a new member of ASEAN, we will naturally work together to strengthen these bonds. We seek to strengthen the degree of cohesion among ASEAN members by preventing external interference and containing intra-regional differences. But we will still look to the United Nations to discharge effectively its responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security in our region. For the unresolved foreign intervention and occupation of Cambodia in violation of United Nations Charter principles causes my delegation grave concern. Mr. President, We need peace for more reasons than one. We have the resources to give our people a better life. Anyone who has visited Brunei Darussalam will vouch for the advancement that have been made in so many fields of endeavor for the well-being of our people. We have devoted our resources to free education, subsidized food and fuels, pensions for the aged and widowed, medical and health care, including a flying doctor service and earnings without income tax. These and many other services are all provided to protect the citizen welfare. We wish to be left alone and free from foreign intervention. We want to build our country and give our people an even better life. We wish to see the realization of our aims for accelerated economic growth, social progress, and cultural development. At the same time, we need to develop productive sectors in agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and manufacturing. We are determined to continue to modernize our country while keeping faith with the principles of our ancient faith, Islam. We are confident of the possibility of success because we have before us the example of my father, His Royal Highness the Sri Begawan Sultan, Haji Sir Muda Omar Ali Saifuddin, the 28th Sultan of Brunei Darussalam, and the architect of modern Brunei. He began the modern development of Brunei, its successful commercial relations, its new buildings, its educational, religious, and social welfare institutions. He held to the goal of national independence despite pressures to make other choices. He set before us the challenges of reinvesting our wealth to create other sources of wealth and well-being for our people. Mr. President, in our task of nation building and development, we need the United Nations to ensure peace and stability. We will also need much assistance. We will need training in specialized fields. We will need experts and technical expertise. We will need to acquire skills. We will turn to the United Nations and its agencies for such help as we may require. My delegation sincerely hopes that we will be able to secure such help when needed. In return, if there is any way in which my small country can be of assistance to the United Nations, we will endeavor to do our best when called upon to do so. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the head of state and Prime Minister of Brunei Darussalam. I should like to announce that the flag of Brunei Darussalam will be raised at a ceremony which will take place at 3 p.m. today in front of the delegates' entrance. We have concluded our consideration of the first item on today's agenda.
Dalam titah baginda itu tadi, antara lain ke bawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia, Paduka Sri Baginda Sultan dan Yang di-Pertuan Negara Brunei Darussalam menyentuh tentang hubungan baik antara Britain dengan Brunei Darussalam. Baginda bertitah, Negara Brunei Darussalam menerima sepenuhnya tanggungjawab yang terkandung dalam Piagam Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu dan mempunyai penuh keyakinan terhadap langkah mengekalkan keamanan dunia melalui keselamatan bersama, pengkalakan perkembangan ekonomi melalui bantuan bersama, serta hak sesebuah negara untuk membentuk jenis kerajaannya sendiri tanpa campur tangan asing. Baginda juga menyentuh tentang perkembangan dunia, khususnya di Timur Tengah, Afghanistan, Selatan Afrika, serta rantau Asia Tenggara sendiri. Satu majlis santap tengah hari telah diadakan pada hari tersebut. Majlis yang diadakan di bangunan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu itu telah dihadiri oleh para perwakilan keseluruhan negara anggota Pertubuhan Sedunia itu. Sambil diperkenalkan oleh Ketua Protokol Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu, Tuan Ali Tema, mereka berkesempatan untuk mengucapkan tahniah secara pribadi kepada Kebawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Baginda Sultan dan Yang di-Pertuan Negara Brunei Darussalam. Bagi Perhimpunan Agung Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu, kemasukan Negara Brunei Darussalam itu bermakna satu lagi undi bagi negara-negara dunia ketiga, dan dalam perhimpunan tersebut di mana undi majoriti memainkan peranan penting bagi menentukan nasib satu-satu ketetapan, kelebihan. Satu undi itu boleh menjadi satu kelebihan yang strategik. Bangsa-bangsa bersatu sejak diwujudkan telah banyak melihat pertumpahan darah yang melibatkan juga orang-orang awam yang tidak berdosa. Usaha ke arah mewujudkan keselamatan dan keamanan serantaulah yang menjadi cabaran utama yang kini dipikul oleh negara Brunei Darussalam sebagai negara anggota Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Upacara menaikkan bendera kebangsaan negara Brunei Darussalam dilangsungkan pada pukul 3 petang waktu New York di hari yang sama. Upacara di luar bangunan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu itu dihadiri oleh sebilangan perwakilan negara anggota. Seperti juga kedudukan kursi negara Brunei Darussalam di Dewan Perhimpunan Agung, bendera Brunei Darussalam mengambil tempat antara Brazil dan Bulgaria. Tetapi bagi upacara petang tersebut, bendera Brunei Darussalam dikibarkan antara bendera Nigeria dan Niger.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here for an auspicious ceremony to mark the admission of Brunei Darussalam as the 159th member state of the United Nations. I wish to extend a very warm welcome to His Majesty Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah and to express to him my most sincere congratulations on this significant occasion. I would like to extend to His Majesty and to his government and people my very best wishes for a peaceful and prosperous future. By joining our organization today, Brunei Darussalam is taking another step towards participation in the intricate network of multilateral activities and cooperation following the resumption of its full international responsibilities as a sovereign and independent state on 1st January 1984. Brunei Darussalam's presence in our midst will also bring the United Nations closer to the realization of one of its fundamental objectives, that of universality of membership. Our newest member state belongs to a region which has emerged today as one of the most dynamic and fastest developing areas in the world. We look forward to the contribution which Brunei Darussalam will make to our organization in this search for a world of peace and justice based on its own experience and history. I wish to assure Your Majesty on your complete support and cooperation as Brunei Darussalam faces the challenges which lie ahead. It is with great pleasure, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that I now give the order for the flag of Brunei Darussalam to be raised here at the United Nations headquarters.
Sempena dengan hari yang bersejarah itu, Kebawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Baginda Sultan dan Yang di-Pertuan Negara Brunei Darussalam telah mendermakan sejumlah 1 juta ringgit Amerika atau lebih dari 2 juta ringgit Brunei bagi tabung kanak-kanak Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Sumbangan tersebut diserahkan kepada Setiausaha Agung Tuan Dikuya yang kemudian menyerahkannya kepada Timbalan Pengarah Pentadbir rancangan tabung tersebut, Tuan Richard Jolly. Sempena dengan hari tersebut juga, Kebawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia telah dihadiahkan cenderamata oleh Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu.
Great gratitude on behalf of the United Nations and on behalf of the Director who served this
very significant and the contribution of Your Majesty and His government. And I would like to hand it to my colleague, and with all our gratitude. And I would like Your Majesty to allow me to present you with this very modest token of the United Nations gratitude to your government with this medals of United Nations activities.
Tuan Richard Jolly dalam ucapan terima kasihnya berkata, 40,000 orang kanak-kanak mati setiap hari di dunia. Sumbangan ke bawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia itu, jelas beliau, akan dapat membantu mengatasi berbagai masalah yang dihadapi oleh kanak-kanak di masa ini.
And very sizable contribution, but it's not the first. Brunei and His Majesty have in fact contributed to UNICEF over the last few years, and those contributions have been very gratefully received. If I may say a word about how UNICEF would propose to use this contribution, Brunei has made wonderful progress in the situation of its own children, and if I may say with respect, your own interest in the welfare of children in your country and beyond is well known to those of us in UNICEF. But in much of the third world, children are still suffering in very difficult ways. Some 40,000 young children die each day from readily preventable causes. UNICEF in the last few years has identified in many countries a willingness to change the situation by promotion of immunization, control of diarrhea disease, monitoring of the nutrition status of children. There's movement in spite of recession, and why we are very excited and honored to receive this check is that it provides the basis for us expanding and continuing this work to the benefit, we hope, of some countries in the ASEAN group, certainly many in Asia, Africa and Latin America. Your Majesty, with very, very great gratitude, I express the thanks of UNICEF's Executive Director for this very tangible contribution.
Semasa di New York, baginda juga telah mendermakan sebanyak $250,000 bagi tujuan kebajikan serta $500,000 bagi kota New York. Melengkapkan upacara pada 23 hari bulan September itu ialah upacara menyerahkan surat tauliah oleh Wakil Tetap Negara Brunei Darussalam ke Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu Awang Haji Omar bin Haji Suriddin kepada Setiausaha Agong Tuan Paris di Korea.
Very honored and very pleased to establish this credentials and very close relationship between your country and the United Nations. I congratulate Your Excellency and introduce to you the Secretary General,
Para perwakilan negara Brunei Darussalam juga telah diperkenalkan secara rasmi kepada pegawai-pegawai Sekretariat Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Pada 26 hari bulan September, negara Brunei Darussalam telah mengadakan satu majlis jamuan bagi memperingati kemasukan negara Brunei Darussalam selaku negara yang ke-159 Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Majlis tersebut diadakan di sebuah hotel terkemuka di New York, Waldorf Astoria. Menyambut para undangan di majlis tersebut ialah Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pengiran Perdana Wazir, Menteri Luar Negara Brunei Darussalam, dan Yang Teramat Mulia Pengiran Anak Isteri Pengiran Anak Zaria. Duta Besar Brunei Darussalam ke Amerika Syarikat, Tuan Yang Terutama Pengiran Idris, serta Wakil Tetap Brunei Darussalam ke Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu Awang Haji Omar bin Haji Suriddin juga hadir. Pada keseluruhannya, 400 orang diplomat serta pembesar-pembesar negara telah diundang ke majlis tersebut yang diadakan selama 2 jam. Pada undangan termasuklah Presiden Dewan Perhimpunan Agung Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu Tuan Paul Lusaka serta menteri-menteri luar negara-negara ASEAN yang lain. perhimpunan tersebut memberikan peluang kepada para diplomat Brunei Darussalam untuk bertukar-tukar pendapat sambil menambahkan pengalaman di bidang tata susila diplomatik. Negara Brunei Darussalam sejak awal tahun ini telah menjadi tumpuan perhatian bukan sahaja kerana pencapaian kemerdekaannya, tetapi kerana cara pencapaian tersebut dibuat. Negara Brunei Darussalam mungkin adalah satu-satunya negara yang mencapai taraf kemerdekaan penuh secara aman dan teratur. Dan sejak hari kemerdekaannya, negara Brunei Darussalam diterima oleh negara bangsa-bangsa tanpa sebarang keraguan. Ini terbukti dari penyertaannya dalam ASEAN, Pertubuhan Persidangan Islam serta Commonwealth. Bagi negara yang hanya mempunyai penduduk seramai kira-kira 200,000 orang itu, menjadi pertubuhan yang menggabungkan 4.5 bilion umat bukan saja merupakan satu penghormatan besar, tetapi juga sebagai bukti ke arah menghayatinya sebagai sebuah negara yang benar-benar Darussalam.